Welcome back. Cecily Alexander is one of our featured women of excellence this month. She recently wrote her memoirs in a book entitled Immigration, Race, and Survival from Trinidad to Canada, Living in Parallel Worlds. Please welcome Cecily Alexander. Hello, Cecily, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Jennifer. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So we met just a little while ago and you were telling me about a book that you wrote, your memoir. Can you share with us? It was fascinating to me, so I just want you to share it with all of London.
Right. My memoir, the name says it all. It's Immigration, Race, and Survival from Trinidad to Canada, Living in Parallel Worlds. And I wrote it at the beginning of COVID. I wrote it through the lens of race, because when I started writing, I realized that from my arrival to Canada, race has been a significant part of my existence in Canada.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we spoke about were the terms microaggression and microinvalidation, which are terms that have been thrown around a lot over the last couple of years. Can you just share what their actual definitions are and how it relates to this book?
Sure. I'll start off by saying it wasn't until 2017 when I was skiing in Utah and chatted with a guide and telling him about some of my experiences. He said, "Cecily, those are microaggressions." And I said, "What?" I hadn't heard the term. I typed it into my phone, came back and researched it. And a whole big light opened up in front of me. And I realized that the experiences in my book, I say, I know what I was experiencing was wrong, but I didn't have the words. Well, I did when I got the terms microaggressions and microinvalidation, because they explained my experiences totally. So microaggressions, or better, microinvalidations, talks about the other person, in my case, two managers. It talks about making you invisible and negating who you are. It talks about nullifying a person of color. So it's within a situation where it's so covert that it's really hard sometimes to identify it. Because if someone is going through that experience in a work setting by a manager, then the stress of that situation can put the individual in terms of depression, maybe even poor attendance, and a variety of things, not doing their work as well. And if the person complains or says something about it, it's very easy for the person to say, "Oh, I've fired you," or "I've gotten rid of you because of all these other reasons," and not because of prejudice or racism occurring. So I think the reason I survived so well is, in both the instances that I relate in my memoir, my work was stellar. The person could not fault me based on my work. So that's one of the big things of how I survived, I think, until I eventually retired.
Yeah, it's almost very confusing, very frustrating, because you're right. Unless you know the word to use, it's almost crazy making, because you're just like, was it this? Did they mean this? And you just don't know, right?
Yeah. In my memoir, my lawyer wrote an amazing foreword where he actually said in the foreword that, and he's a friend, so I told him about some of my experiences, but he said in his foreword, it came really clear to him. He had always thought he understood racism until he read my memoir. And he actually said that he complimented himself for being aware of what it was until he read what I had written. So let me give you some examples. It's in one of my first jobs, and this goes back to the 90s, and it was in London. Restructuring was going through all the hospitals that I've worked in. I'm a dietitian by profession. And I had a stellar, excellent career that was booming in terms of what I did and the development of my department, and very progressive. And then with restructuring, I got a nurse manager. In my book, I say she was my nemesis because I had experiences with her before, but they were not, I could ignore them because she was not in a line relationship with me. And then I inherited her as my manager. From day one, the microaggressions started. But you see, what is hard, because it's so covert, she did them in private. So in a way, I suffered in silence. She fired me after 11 months of being my manager, not for any reason, but she said that it was due to restructuring. So it wasn't for cause, it was due for restructuring. But interestingly, in private,
I'm going to stop you only because I want people to get the book and read it. And
okay.
I think that for people of color,
I have a copy.
it's going to be a book that's going to validate them, validate their experiences. And for people who are not people of color, it's going to open your eyes. So thank you so much. Where can people find your book?
They can find it on Amazon, or they can also find it on the Amazon, or you can get it through Chapters, but it has to be ordered through both of those sources. So thank you so much. It's I mean, there's so many other themes. I've just talked about one of them, but I also talk about the differences that people that come from the Caribbean, because we grew up in a Black society where our leaders, our teachers, we didn't have Jim Crow, we didn't have separate buses or accommodation. We have a different attitude to racism in Canada. And it's not the American experience or even the Canadian experience where you could experience racism from a very young age. So yes, please read it.